Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello, and welcome back to Soul Archaeology. Wow, what an incredibly powerful time. This has been such a wild eclipse season. Over the last 10, 12 days, we've really been navigating this in-between space, this space where we're really wedged between two eclipses. And this space is where so much material and data can come forward. Material and data around what we're changing within our lives, what we fear, where we fear releasing control and surrender, where we seek to grip to outcomes, where we fear change. Because eclipses are karmic, because they come in as realignment storms, it can be so activating to experience the intensity of a storm and not having any control over what it changes within your life, what it moves in and out, what it releases and what it brings in. It's why these are such powerful opportunities to root deeper, to anchor into self, and to really acknowledge what we have control over and what we don't. To lean into practices, rituals, self-care routines that really serve, that really enable us to anchor to a higher vibration. I've been in North Carolina over the last week, and there was a pretty big hurricane that hit Florida and then made its way up as a tropical storm up through the southern states into the Carolinas and into Tennessee. So it's been quite a wild time to experience that type of storm. I haven't experienced a hurricane in a long time. And of course, my heart is with everyone who has been affected by the storm. It's been a really powerful and sort of unpredictable storm. And there have been many, many places and communities that have been completely devastated. The community of Asheville and the surrounding area, which is a place that I love so dearly. And I'm just thinking of everyone across the country who's navigating devastation in all the different ways that it can come through. But it's always interesting to see what types of storms arise during eclipse season. Sometimes it can be emotional storms. Sometimes it can be sudden events or shocking events that take place. But so often it is a type of storm. And this storm was really very destructive. So it's been interesting to kind of experience the lack of control that we really have when it comes to Mother Nature, and so much of what occurred, especially in the mountains where it was that dams were broken. And when we think about damming a river and creating and controlling the power of water, controlling the power of Mother Earth, she sends us these reminders so often that we don't have control. That when we seek control, when we seek to control and to manipulate and to exploit her, she will break through. And this is not to say that the dams that broke are, that people that created them or the communities that created them deserved it. That's not at all what I'm saying, but it's sort of a metaphor for what these eclipses are showing us. It's what we're reminded of time and time again within this lived experience. That we are a part of this greater one consciousness, that we have certain things we can control, but so much that is out of our control. That what we truly seek is a connection to the divine, a connection to something greater something deeper than what we've experienced up to this point. And because eclipses ask for us to tend to attune to the needs and wants and desires of our soul rather than our ego, they can be quite confronting. They can bring up a lot of material that we tend to avoid or hide from. They can be gritty, intense, the more we try to grip to the outcome. So much of what eclipse season asks of us is to anchor deeply into faith, to surrender, to let go, to observe, to click into the practices and routines that really serve us, that keep us regulated, that keep us grounded and anchored. And this week we have our next eclipse, which is a new moon solar eclipse on October 2nd at 10 degrees Libra, 11:45 a.m. Pacific. This is the second eclipse within this pairing. We had our first lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 17th, and now we are closing out the eclipse season with a new moon solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd. This is the last eclipse we will have in Libra for 9 years, so this is certainly a completion of something. I know I've talked about a lot about this in the last few episodes, but an eclipse occurs when we have a full or new moon close to the lunar node points. And currently the lunar nodes are at 6 degrees Libra, the south node, and the north node is at 6 degrees Aries. So when we have a new or full moon that touches or gets close to those lunar nodes, we have an eclipse. And eclipses are really checkpoints. They're karmic realignments, points of major change, breakthroughs, realizations, pivots. They force us to go to places within ourselves that are uncomfortable, that we tend to avoid. They ask for radical courage, trust, faith. Eclipses are change points where we interrupt the norm, where we interrupt the pattern and reset. Because the lunar nodes are tied to our karma, eclipses are storms that help us realign with our evolutionary path. They help us to release the path that's keeping us stuck on old timelines, stuck in old patterns, gripping to the past, and realign with the courage we need to click into the north node, our destiny. So we're always on this journey of realignment and realigning with our true north, with our higher self or our higher timeline. But of course, we have the past that informs our choices, that informs our reality. So eclipses show us where we're leaning into the shadow of the south node, the shadow of the past, where we're pulling from karmic data, where we've been, and informing our present decisions that shape our future. So they can be super helpful. They can be karmic aids, I like to call them. They are evolutionary storms, they're karmic storms, but they really are bringing us the material and the data we need to work through. We need to witness, we need to integrate. They are picking us up and placing us on another path. So they're very helpful, but they can be very uncomfortable. Because the south node is currently in Libra, the nodes shifted into Libra and Aries in July of 2023. So we've been in a full year, over a year of this journey of realigning with our true self, realigning with our power, realigning with our courage, and blending our desire for change with our desire for balance. The South Node in Libra has been forcing us to look at where we still hold unhealthy or unhelpful relational patterns, where we still hold people from our past within our psyche, within our subconscious, within our relational framework. So many of my clients had been having wild dream space action, especially with the lunar eclipse in Pisces, working with Neptune in Pisces. We've been doing so much work within the dream space, and so many old relationships, old relational patterns have been coming through, not just in the dream space, but in reality as well. It's important to notice everything right now, to observe, Nothing that happens within an eclipse portal is coincidence. It's all bringing us to more clarity, more awareness around what we're releasing, what's still held within our framework, and where we need to go, where we're headed, the energy we're meant to be leaning into or embracing. So a lot of my clients have been having wild dreams or noticing relational patterns that they still carry from old relationships, either the relationship with their family, their parents, past partners, past lives. Of course, if we have a relational pattern, and I kind of talked about this in the last episode, but we hold relational patterns within ourselves and we attract within our relational framework, I should say, which is something that I call the space where we connect with others. And we call in people based upon the data that's held within our relational framework. And when I work with clients, we're going into this framework and we're healing and releasing the information from the past so that you can click into the aligned relationships of the present, the aligned relationships with the North Node, with your North Node or the transiting North Node. And we have to do this excavation work, this retrieval work of going back and reviewing and healing the wounds of the past or the data of the past in order to create new relational patterns. And this is so much of the work that we're doing. This is why I'm calling it a relational realignment, a relational purge, a relational reset, because we are quite literally going into our relational framework and looking at what's being held there that isn't serving the highest timeline, the relationships aligned with our highest self, our highest frequency. And when we can release that, we can open ourselves to attract in the beings, the people, the relationships, the opportunities that are more aligned with our higher self. And the South Node in Libra has certainly been helping us do this. It has not been comfortable because it's forcing us into really taking the reins of our lives. I've done a lot of episodes about the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, and I really encourage you to go back and listen to those because they have a lot of nutrient-dense data around this axis and what we're working within. But if we think about the shadow of Libra, it's avoidance, it is people-pleasing, it's codependency, it is choosing to keep the peace rather than head into conflict. And this is powerful, right? We need Libra to help us balance. We need Libra to help us understand how we relate to the other. But it can also lead to patterns of self-abandonment when we start to create patterns of attuning to the other rather than the self. The North Node in Aries is really leading us into choice, into action, into sovereignty, into a deeper connection with self. This is, of course, also bringing up shadow aspects of Aries, which can be self-centeredness, selfishness, lack of concern or awareness around the other. So our work really is now, it's not to release all of Libra and just lean into Aries. Our work is to find the balance between the two, striking that middle space where we can be in our power. We can be connected to self, be self-aware in relationship with the other, where we can consider others and consider ourselves at the same time. And this might sound like simple work, but it's the deepest work. It enables us to have a healthy connection to self and a healthy connection to others. I've only met a few people in this life who have truly secure connection, secure attachment. And that's because we are relational beings here having a mirroring experience with the other. We're here to learn about our own experience through the mirror of the other. And this is such a beautiful gift, but it's also deeply confronting, deeply challenging to confront our own egos, our own survival systems that keep us detached from connection, true connection. So this solar eclipse we have on October 2nd is the last one in Libra we'll have until 9 years down the line when we enter this axis again. It is, though, connected to the eclipse we'll have in Aries next March of 2025. New moons are new beginnings. But because this eclipse is a south node solar eclipse, it's connected to the south node. It's also about endings. So what's being brought to the surface now is what we will navigate over the next 6 months until March of 2025, when we have the revisiting of this axis and this very specific point, because the next eclipse in Aries will be at 9 degrees of Aries. So we'll actually activate this point once again. And it gives us 6 months of opportunities to release these patterns within our lives. So eclipses come in and they're karmic helpers, they're karmic realigners. So they actually bring us and reset us and move us to new timelines. But we still have to do the work. We still have to show up for our lives and make choices that are aligned with the higher timeline, with the heart, rather than the wound, rather than the past. So the next 6 months really hold opportunities to realign, to choose differently. And we, of course, will receive opportunities. I call them opportunities rather than tests, but they can feel like tests at times because we're given a choice to choose this or that. Now, it's important to remember we can't make mistakes. We can choose a more direct path or we can choose a longer path, but either way, we will get where we need to go. So with this eclipse being tied to the South Node in Libra at 10 degrees, we're ending old relational patterns of self-abandonment, codependency, avoidance, fantasizing the other, dissociation, and all of the relationships tied to these old patterns. They'll be given an opportunity to either change, to pivot, to transform, or to end. This eclipse is also linked to the solar eclipse that we had in Libra on October 14th of 2023, so last year. What were we navigating then that we're still navigating now? How can we choose a new path? We've been given this time to see clearly where we're participating in these patterns that are no longer serving. How can we choose differently this time? The South Node is the past. So much of the past can be coming forward right now. And it can come through, like I said, in the dream space. I've been having a lot of clients have dreams about past partners, past relationships, or it can come up through your consciousness in real time. It can come up just starting to think about someone or thinking about how you participated in a past relationship. It can also come up and show us where we're avoiding life, where we're avoiding conflict and difficulty. It's not just about relationships, but relationships are the mirror. So where are you afraid to take the reins of your life? Where are you afraid to facilitate major change? Where are you afraid to take the leap? This time will reveal to us where we're self-abandoning, where we are choosing to attune to or give power away to the other, whether that be another person, a relationship, a substance, a source of something. The lunar eclipse in Pisces really brought forward patterns of dissociation, addiction, and this can be really linked to Libra as well, because there's so much data that comes into a Libran's field. And because it's the nervous system of the zodiac, it's having to process so much information. It's sometimes easier to dissociate from the challenge, the conflict, the activation, the wounding, the confrontation, and give away the power to the other person or the other substance or the other power. This is the shadow of Libra. The high expression of Libra is that it's able to take in data and information from the external and take in the data and information from the internal and make a choice that feels in alignment with balance and harmony. Libra is a cardinal air sign. So it is connected to initiation, to change, And the work of now is to start to learn how we can make decisions from a non-emotional space. So where we can honor our emotional experience, but not let that drive our choices. We're really trying to look at things through an objective and clear lens as we experience a Mercury cazimi right before this eclipse. This eclipse is also connected to Mercury. It's linked and tied conjunct to Mercury as well. So there's a bit of an awakening or a realization that can come through during this time. This Mercury cazimi is definitely welcomed on the other side of the Mercury retrograde we were navigating in August and September. So it's an illuminating time. The planet of communication, of ideas, of the mental space is being illuminated by the sun and connected to this eclipse. So communication, discernment is definitely high. Venus, which is the ruler of this eclipse, is also in Scorpio, so it's going to be digging up some deep, buried data and material. We did a lot of work with the South Node in Scorpio over the last 3 or 4 years, and that kicked up so much karmic data, so much data from the past. This time might be activating and bringing forward things you had forgotten about, things that had been held in your subconscious, but not necessarily available to see. Mars in Cancer will also be squaring this eclipse, adding this emotional tension, this desire to change, this desire to transform, this desire to even enter into conflict. And the work is to notice where we are or how we are dealing with conflict. Avoiding conflict is not the healthy pathway, but choosing to enter into conflict in a conscious, grounded, loving way can transform everything. The shadow of Aries, the shadow of Mars, is that it can be reactive, it can be fiery, it can lack discernment and awareness. So our work is to notice how we deal with conflict. The shadow of Libra is to avoid it altogether. The shadow of Aries is to plow into it without awareness. We talked in the last episode a lot about conscious conflict, how we can use conflict to create deeper and fortify our relationships, how we can use it as nutrient-rich data to crack deeper into our connection with others, and how we can even deepen our own relationship to self through conflict, internal conflict, confronting the spaces and places within us that feel challenging or shadowy, and loving, nurturing, mothering those spaces, choosing to witness those spaces with love, allows us to deepen our anchor into self, understand ourselves better, understand our connection to all things. Libra's evolutionary goal is to relate. I talked a lot about this in the last episode, but I'll go into it a little bit more. And when we think about Libra, it's the 7th sign in the zodiac. It begins the second half of our evolutionary journey through the zodiac. We go through this deep journey of self-development in the first 7 signs. When we reach Libra, we begin to consider and to place focus on the other rather than just the self. It is justice, it is the scales, it's where we seek balance, equilibrium, and harmony. And it's quite literally the axis of the rest of the zodiac, so it's this balancing point. And that's quite a lot of pressure to put on a cardinal air sign. But it really shows us and teaches us that balance and peace are earned through practice, through intention. Peace is not inherent in this world that we live in. We have to access the space within us that holds that peace and develop practices to stay connected to it always, or to return to it after conflict or after activation. The shadow of Libra, like I said, can be self-abandonment, codependency, avoidance. It can be unhinged, flighty, indecisive, even uncommitted in its search for the other, always seeking something else, imbalanced and overwhelmed when trying to find balance, dissociated, fragmented, people-pleasing. Overstimulation and overwhelm are signs and signals that there's a Libra overwhelm, that there's an imbalance occurring. And within the Libra work, we always seek our mirroring of ourselves in the other in order to find and figure out where we are imbalanced. This time will be revealing where we are abandoning ourselves to keep the peace, where we're editing ourselves in order to keep the peace and to avoid conflict. It will also reveal where we're seeking conflict, where we're unwilling to go within ourselves to process the emotional stimuli and rather dumping it on another group, another person, our partner, because the shadow of Aries is that it can lack self-awareness. This whole transit of the lunar nodes through Aries and Libra has been forcing us to access our power, to access our truth. It's been revealing where we're hiding from the truth. The South Node is familiarity, so it's what feels safe, quote unquote, often. But safe isn't always, familiar isn't always in alignment with our highest and greatest good. Sometimes we have to disrupt, we have to challenge ourselves, we have to take the courageous leap of faith to challenge the status quo, to challenge what's been familiar for us. This is an opportunity to move through conflict in an evolved way. We know that conflict is unavoidable. It can be an opportunity, or it can create more fragmentation. If we choose to embrace conflict as an opportunity to deepen our connection, to see more clearly the other that's being reflected back to us, we can deepen the connection, we can fortify the connection. If we avoid conflict, we really avoid the connection to self and the connection to the other. So it creates more space. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to engage in deep conversation around every single thing that comes forward. Sometimes we can let things go. But it's really important right now to discern where we are avoiding out of fear, because this is where the work lies. Where are we afraid to engage in nuance, in the unknown, in the difficult conversations, out of fear? Libra, in her highest expression, teaches us that true balance, harmony, can be found through our own center point, the point that exists within us, and that balance is not an eternal state, but a practice. This time teaches us that we need a secure connection to self. We need self-awareness in order to connect authentically with the world around us. So engage with the emotional stimuli. Engage with the activation. Engage with the conflict in a way that's loving. Process what's occurring within you first. And then if it feels safe, enter into discussion, communication, connection with the other. We have a lot happening in the cardinal signs right now. We have Mars in Cancer. We have Pluto retrograding through Capricorn. We have an eclipse in Libra, Chiron, and the North Node in Aries. So this time is about change. It's about initiation. It's about observing where we're avoiding life and instead taking the reins, stepping into our power. This is such a powerful, opportunistic time, but it's also deeply confronting. This eclipse will be felt mostly by those who have placements at 6 to 14 degrees of cardinal signs. So Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, and Libra. So if you want to see how this eclipse will affect you, looking at where you have placements within those degrees of those signs will really tell you how this will impact your life. What's alchemizing within you, what wants witnessing, acknowledgement, change, transformation. The last part of this year is quite tumultuous. It's intense. It's fiery. It's going to bring forward this unconscious material for us to witness and acknowledge within ourselves. Where are we gripping to the familiar? Where are we choosing to stay safe rather than activate our fullest and greatest power? Where are we avoiding life? This will be revealed to us over the next 6 months. From now until the March 2025 eclipse in Aries at 9 degrees Aries, it's going to be a challenging time. It's going to be a time of deep confrontation, collectively and individually. How we engage with and navigate conflict will determine the health of our being as we navigate this time and the health of our collective. Practices for this time: first and foremost, surrender. Notice what you're gripping to and observing why. Why do you have an attachment to this person, relationship, thing, pattern, belief? Can you let go a little bit? Can you explore the space between you and the thing? Can you observe what part of you feels safer having it in your field? Letting go does not mean that it will leave. It means that you get to form a new relationship with it. A relationship not rooted in fear, but rooted in love, rooted in connection. Self-care, taking care of your physical body, your mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health. Anchoring into the practices that feel the most grounding, the most regulating. And paying attention. Observing what's moving around. When we're in the eye of the storm, it's a perfect time to observe. What's leaving, what's coming in, why. Because eclipses are so karmic, they oftentimes bring things in very quickly and pull things out very quickly. It can be like a hurricane or a tornado where you're just watching everything change so rapidly and you have little control over what's occurring. So it's a good time to observe, to take everything with a grain of salt, but to witness your experience within this, to zoom out and view it from the eagle's eye perspective. Eagle medicine has been so deeply present for me over the last few months, and I always work closely with hawk and eagle, but this has been just really wild how important the messaging is around zooming out, viewing things through an objective lens, pulling out of the emotional turmoil of the experience and witnessing the experience from the eagle's eye perspective, the higher self perspective, the adult perspective. We will be working through these eclipse lessons over the next 6 months, but even especially over the next few weeks as the eclipse portal begins to close. We move into some heavy Mars energy in December, the beginning of December. November is activating. We have some planets going direct. We have Pluto entering into Aquarius again. So there's quite a lot of energetic material to work with. I have one space available for private mentorship this fall. We'll begin mid-October. If you have questions about that, if you're interested, this is my favorite way to work with clients. It's a 3-month container. We go deep into your core layers, into the core wounds. We begin to transform those spaces. And through the process of the integration of self, we begin to repair fragmentation, to create more wholeness, and to realign you with your authentic center. It's a blend of shamanic journeying, quantum and intuitive healing, evolutionary astrology, inner child work, parts work, and somatic experiencing. So I have one space left for that. If you're interested, you can book a clarity call. I have some calls coming forward, but I always like to keep it open on the podcast and just remind you that there is a space available. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this episode with friends and family, people you think would resonate with the episode. Sharing it on social media helps so much. I just appreciate each and every one of you so much. Thank you for being here. I'm heading back to LA, back home, which will be a nice grounding, orienting landing. I've been on the road for about 2 months, so it will be nice to anchor and really ground into autumn. So the next time I speak to you, I'll be speaking to you from LA. I hope you all have an incredible eclipse, a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon.